In the world in which we live today, everything has changed. We have turned our back on civility as a culture. We don't have it anymore. It's not part of our daily lives. We are uncivil. We are uncivilized as a people. And so the video is all over the place yesterday. Daniel Jones, New York Giants quarterback, much maligned. Again, since he signed his most recent contract extension, he has actually thrown more touchdowns to the opposing team than he has to his own. That's one of the worst stats I've ever heard in my entire life, and it's true. But he didn't do anything terrible to any person. He's just at worst, let's just say it this way, at his absolute worst, he's just a bad player. It's not his fault he got paid so much money. They paid him so much money. They did so willingly. He's not the first, nor will he be the last player who isn't that good to get paid a lot of money. So, what does this mean? So yesterday, the video is making the rounds. He's walking out of the stadium, and they have set up, I don't know exactly what this is, but they have set up like a walking area. It's a little area that's kind of got a little fencing around it, and the players walk through it, and they almost walk through it. Almost looks like you might see people walking a red carpet, you know, and there's fans standing there lining it and all that. And this is what they have to walk through to get to their car. And poor Daniel Jones is walking by himself, hands in his pockets, just played a terrible game. Clearly, no one feels worse than he does about how terribly he just played and how terribly his team just got shellacked. And he's got to walk what has basically been turned now into a human gauntlet of fans who are yelling and booing at him. One guy is yelling, "Give me $1 million, Daniel Jones," basically yelling, "Give me $1 million, I need $1 million, give me $1 million." Some other people are yelling, "You suck," and things a little bit less kind than that. And he's just kind of walk through this group of people and take it. It's one thing to be standing out on a field surrounded by your 52 other teammates and having significant space from where all the fans are sitting in their seats and you having on a helmet and shoulder pads and everything else, than when you're just some 26, 27-year-old guy walking through this group of people. And they're all yelling nasty things at him. So is that fair or unfair is the question we're going to go in search of the answer of. And the answer is, it's both. It's disgraceful. It's horrible. If you see Daniel Jones in the street, by no means should you yell, "Hey, Daniel, you suck." You should either just ignore it completely or walk over to him and say, "Hey, do you mind if we take a picture?" or something like that. Because he didn't do anything to you. Yes, you're a fan of his team, but he didn't insult your family. He didn't physically threaten you in any way. He hasn't done anything wrong to you. He's just a person doing his job. His job is to put his work out there, and your job is to critique it. And sitting in the stands, booing, you can wear out a lung booing if you want to. If you want to stand there and boo him as he walks out of the stadium, that will forever influence my opinion of you. But is it unfair? This is the business we've chosen, people. This is the way it is. Is it unfair that Taylor Swift is walking into the U.S. Open yesterday or walking out of a restaurant and there's 500 people standing outside taking pictures and screaming and yelling things? Is that unfair that she can't live a normal life? Let's not use her as an example. Let's stay in sports. That LeBron James can't take his family to dinner the way I can or you can or most other people can. You know, I wrote in my first book, 18 years ago it came out, that I am the exact perfect amount of famous. And I'm a little more so than I was then, but it still works out perfectly. I'm just enough famous that people will say nice things to you in the street, but I can live a perfectly normal life like anybody else can. When you get to a different level of famous, that level of famous where people are that invested in the things that you do, or people can actually make money by taking pictures of you, it changes the equation. So this is a long meandering way of my saying that just because something is unfair doesn't mean that at this day and age we just have to learn to live with it. Like, this is just the price of admission now of being an NFL quarterback. You want to be an NFL quarterback in this, or at this point probably any media market, with the confluence of people are betting on you, their fantasy teams are riding on you, They're half the time so drunk they don't really know what they're doing anyway. And they're in most cases very emotionally invested in your success because it directly determines the team's success. This is just the world we live in now. So it doesn't matter if it's fair or unfair. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make any difference if it's unfair. It's never going to change. There are so many things that are happening in our culture right now that are so much worse than that because they're so genuinely and legitimately detrimental to our well-being, to our psychological well-being, to the way our society functions, that this feels like a drop in the ocean. So for me to sit here and say, oh my goodness, isn't this terrible that people are yelling, you suck at Daniel Jones as he's walking out of the stadium, while I do feel empathy for him, I feel sympathy for him, I'm not going to sit here and make a big deal out of it. Now, if anyone threatened him, if anyone got in his space, if anyone yelled horrible things about his family or something like that, that would change my opinion. But just yelling, you suck, or implying you're overpaid by saying I need $1 million, in the day and age in which we live, I just think that's where we are. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's unfair because it would just be like yelling into the wind. There's no point in saying it. We're so far past this that it doesn't make any difference anymore. Cam, agree or disagree?
I agree to a point. I just wish that we could have the conversation about whether it's fair or unfair without just throwing our hands up and being like, well, it's going to happen, so it doesn't matter whether it's fair or unfair. Obviously, if you're just looking at it from the, binary perspective, is it fair or unfair? It's very unfair to have obscenities yelled in your face. No one's saying anything too far beyond the pale, I think, but no one should have to be treated like that, even, after having a terrible game in front of, 80,000 fans. But it just is so unfortunate that we are so resigned to the fact that this is the existence that, celebrities or famous people have to deal with. And yes, they're very wealthy, so they're going to be fine. And Daniel Jones is going to be fine. He's going to have he's may not have a great NFL career, but he probably has a fine life. So he's not in any danger, hopefully, or anything like that. But it's just unfortunate. I'm just so sick of fans and people just having these ideas in their head that they have the right to attack people, these parasocial relationships, whether it's online or in person. They just have this feeling that they're entitled to spew their opinion directly to the person they're mad at for whatever reason, for any reason whatsoever. I'm just tired of that being the existence that we live in. So, yes, it sucks that that's a reality, but I think at the end of the day, just because there's terrible things going on in the world outside of this doesn't mean we can't call this what it is, which is pretty gross and unfair to Daniel Jones, even if he had a bad game on Sunday.
That's fair. But tell me if you think this answers the question, okay? So we did this media thing up here a couple of weeks ago, and someone was asking me about what it is like to be on the air, as I have been now for 30 years. And I've been a relatively well-known person at ESPN now for 28 years, and I was so in Chicago before that. And what it is like to be criticized, and to the extent that people like me get criticized, whether it's on social media or whatever it is. Now, most people do not yell curses in my face as I walk the streets, but to be criticized. And here's what I said. Cam, you tell me if this answers what you're saying. That when you choose something for a living, when you choose a pursuit in life, you don't get to just choose the parts you like.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to say, I want to be famous. I want to make a lot of money. I want people to ask to take pictures of me and to take and for my autograph. I want people to cheer for me when things go really well. And then when things go really badly, I don't want any of the downside. I don't want to be criticized. I don't want people not to like me. If they don't like me, I want them to keep that opinion to themselves. I don't want any of the downside. I don't ever want to be disturbed when I'm just trying to have dinner with my wife and my kids. I don't want any of the downside that comes with this job. That's not reasonable. You can't do that. It doesn't come that way. So this is the choice you're making. When they use the legendary term, this is the business we have chosen. This is the business you have chosen. If you want to be an NFL quarterback, people are going to have a very strong opinion on how you go about doing your job. And you're not allowed to say, I only want to hear from them when we win. So while I agree with you that it is antisocial behavior to be yelling you suck in a person's face, it is the price of admission. And there's also a part of me that feels like, things so much worse than that happen every single day on the streets of this and practically every city in America that do not get mentioned by anyone because they don't happen to famous people, that it feels like we're underlining something that is in the scheme of things, a pretty small problem. Am I overstating that or not?
No, I think that makes total sense. It's just this, this is the space that we're discussing. So we are discussing Daniel Jones.
Right.
Yes, we could spend the time talking about all the horrible things going on in the world, and you could be here for, until the end of time, obviously. But we are discussing Daniel Jones. So this is a topic that we're talking about. And yes, you can't sign up for this and expect all the great stuff when you're successful and, have people ignore the bad stuff when you don't do well. I just think there is a difference between having to answer tough questions and critiques from the media and being, yelled in your face. But that's the day and age, like we've been saying, that we live in. Daniel Jones signed up to be an NFL quarterback. He's not doing too well right now, so he's going to have to live with getting yelled at as he's exiting the stadium.